You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
This episode of Mission Log is brought to you by listeners like you, supporters on Patreon. Join us today at patreon.com/missionlog.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, episode 454, Projections.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Norman Lau. Each week on Mission Log, we believe we are reviewing each and every episode and film of Star Trek, looking for the morals, meanings, and messages contained therein, and seeing if they withstand the test of time.
Today's episode, Projections, the one where we ask ourselves if holograms dream of electric sheep.
John will be back with trivia right after I tell all of you how we believe you can reach all of us. Mission Log is a conversation about Star Trek. Drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com and join us on Twitter and Facebook at MissionLogPod. While you're at it, leave us a review and a rating at Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. And please remember, your comments could be used on Mission Log or Engage on the Roddenberry YouTube channel. And now, here is John Champion with this week's existential trivia.
It is existential and it is extant. And here we go, trivia for Projections. We have a story written by Brannon Braga. Well, actually, he gets the story and the teleplay credit here. It is all his baby. And it's all because of one of the most well-known lines in modern philosophy, cogito ergo sum. Now, that was René Descartes in the middle of the 17th century stating, I think, therefore I am. And it was the perfect launching point for Brannon to craft a story in which the EMH gets to question his entire reality. We'll come back to that, of course. It was directed by Jonathan Frakes, and you have to go way back to TNG's third season to remember Jonathan's directorial debut on Star Trek with the episode The Offspring. He stuck around in the director's chair for 7 more there, then directed 3 on DS9, and this is the first of 3 for him on Voyager. And remember, there is a whole lot more to go when we get into later modern Trek with him. It is interesting to note the timing, though, on this episode. Keep in mind that TNG had been off the air for just 1 year, and that the cast was about to make the jump to feature films. After Generations, Jonathan was in the running to direct the next feature, First Contact. In this episode, this is one of the episodes that went under review to see if he had his chops to take on the movie. Oh, hey, and here we are monkeying around again with the temporal mechanics thing. This episode, this is, yes, another one of those that was shot for Season 1, but held back until Season 2. We've talked about that the last few episodes, but here we are with one more. Let's talk about our guest stars. Well, we have a returning favorite from TNG to make a crossover appearance in this episode. It was Brannon, who wanted Geordi LaForge to confront the EMH in the simulation, but instead it was decided to bring back Reg Barclay, and that's who we've got. Returning to the role is Dwight Schultz, and we've talked before about Dwight's career in and out of Star Trek. You can go all the way back to Mission Log 164 to hear when we first met him in the TNG episode Hollow Pursuits. He made 4 more appearances on TNG, culminating in Genesis, which aired in March of 1994. Now, keep in mind that Voyager was already in development at the time, and one of the actors considered to play the EMH Doctor was, indeed, Dwight Schultz. Now, the production knew that they wanted to bring him back, though, even if he didn't get that role, and here we are just a year later with a clever way to do it, and do not think for a moment that you have seen the last of Reg Barclay on Voyager.
Are you ready to go on a little head trip with us? I hope you packed sandwiches.
Prologue. The Doctor is activated in sickbay and, as he is wont to do, demands to know why. The computer informs him that a ship-wide red alert automatically initiated his program. The The Doctor tries to confirm as the computer explains that all personnel aboard Voyager, including the captain, are gone. Voyager is empty. Act 1. The computer updates the Doctor on the current situation, and it's bad. Very bad. After triaging the current situation, the Doctor manages to access Captain Janeway's bridge logs on the monitor station in his office. It appears that Voyager has been attacked, and most of the major systems are offline, forcing the captain to order all hands to abandon ship. After thoroughly confirming that he is indeed alone on the ship, the Doctor believes his program has come to its logical end. And just as he is making his final medical log entry and is about to self-terminate his program, B'Elanna pries her way into sickbay, nursing an injured shoulder. 2 malfunctioning medical tricorders notwithstanding, the Doctor manually inspects B'Elanna's injuries. She informs him that 2 Kazon warships took Voyager by surprise, and their attack severely crippled the ship. The captain and B'Elanna stayed behind to prevent a warp core breach, as the remainder of the crew escaped in life pods, however were captured via Kazon tractor beams. B'Elanna also tells the Doctor that she needs him to check the captain, who is trapped and injured on the bridge. Unbeknownst to the Doctor, B'Elanna and the captain had been updating the ship's holo-emitters so that the Doctor would have greater access to the more critical areas on Voyager. After diverting power from life support and charging the holo-emitters, B'Elanna transports the Doctor to the bridge. Act 2. Making his way to an unconscious Captain Janeway, the Doctor tries to assess her situation, but once again, his medical tricorder is malfunctioning. Fortunately, his hypospray rouses Janeway and she is pleased to see him, meaning that the holo-emitters are working as planned. After a brief catch-up on the ship's and crew's status, Janeway needs the Doctor to perform essentially a coronary bypass on the bridge's power relay. However, Neelix's desperate call for help over the comm system takes precedence, and Janeway transports the Doctor to the mess hall, where he finds Neelix in culinary combat with what appears to be a Kazon soldier. After taking the Kazon by surprise, the combined efforts of the Doctor, Neelix, and Neelix's best sauté pan are able to subdue the Kazon and thwart the immediate danger. Neelix believes he was injured in the melee due to a large red stain on his shoulder, which the Doctor rules out as some kind of sauce. However, Neelix points out to the Doctor that he is in fact bleeding, puzzling the Doctor to no end because holographic programs aren't supposed to bleed. And after returning to sickbay, his once malfunctioning medical tricorder confirms that he is in fact exuding biological life signs. The Doctor is further alarmed that the computer has, in every certainty, confirmed that there are no active holographic programs running on the ship, and that the chief medical officer on board Voyager is Dr. Louis Zimmerman, who appears on the Doctor's medical files to look exactly like him. Just then, Captain Janeway, B'Elanna, Neelix, and the Kazon prisoner arrive in sickbay. A bewildered Doctor tries to explain what is happening, and Janeway orders to shut down all holo-emitters and systems throughout the ship, causing everyone to disappear except for the Doctor. Act 3. Trying to make any kind of sense of what just happened, the Doctor asks the ship's computer a series of questions which ultimately direct him to Computer Memory Block 47 Alpha, where the entire Voyager crew is stored, because they are just programs. Suddenly, a stranger appears before him and introduces himself as Reg Barclay, who tries to explain in every possible credible way that the Doctor is in fact Louis Zimmerman. Reg is the Doctor's lead assistant, who continues to explain that they are both currently on Jupiter Station, and due to a surge of kinoplasmic radiation, the Doctor is currently trapped in his own fictional program of the USS Voyager, lost in the Delta Quadrant, and a narrative created specifically to study the long-term effects of deep space isolation. Barclay and the Doctor are at an impasse with the credibility of what the Doctor knows and what he's experiencing. The Doctor believes that he is in fact Voyager's emergency medical hologram, but shouldn't feel the pain or discomfort indicative of being an actual life form, a fact that is impressed upon both he and Reg as they share facial slaps to prove their respective points. Reg believes that Zimmerman is suffering from HTDS, holotransference dementia syndrome, due to the prolonged exposure of the kinoplasmic radiation surge of the past 6 hours. Yes, hours, and not 6 months, as the Doctor believes he has been on Voyager and in the Delta Quadrant. After briefly leaving, Barclay returns from his control room and back to the holodeck to give Zimmerman the only two possible ways he can escape the simulation. Either destroy Voyager to end the program, which would unlock the holodeck allowing him to leave, or die within an hour by kinoplasmic radiation poisoning, which is currently affecting the cellular stability of his brain. Act 4. The Doctor is still unconvinced that what he has been told is true, that Barclay is who he claims to be, and that destroying Voyager is the only way to end the recursive holodeck program of which he is trapped inside. He needs more proof before deciding anything. Barclay resets the program to the Doctor's first activation aboard Voyager, which appears to be accurate, right down to Tom Paris's annoying quirks. Well, Reg cops to that as being patterned after his cousin Frank. However, as convincing as all of this may be, Zimmerman knows that if the main holographic matrix is destroyed, who or whatever remains must be real, if Sherlock Holmes' theory holds true. Eliminate the impossible. Whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. After a brief yet charmingly nostalgic run-in with Captain Janeway and B'Elanna in engineering, at the moment before the caretaker whisks the crew away to the Array's welcoming party, Zimmerman destroys the holomatrix and is still active, is still alive. Confirming his suspicions, he asks the computer if there are any holographic programs currently running, to which the computer responds with a resounding negative. Then why is the holodeck still active? Where is the arch and the default hologrid? To compound the confusion even more, Barclay explains that ending a holodeck program within a holodeck doesn't satisfy the program's acquired ending, and thus the destruction of Voyager itself by breaching the warp core is the only way. Handing the Doctor a phaser, Reg nudges him one step closer to finishing the story. Suddenly, in the nick of time, Commander Chakotay bursts into engineering, yelling at the Doctor to stop and that Reg is lying. Act 5. With little time to spare, Chakotay tries to convince the Doctor that he is still on Voyager's holodeck, taking a holiday as suggested by Captain Janeway, and that a kinoplasmic radiation surge is currently the cause of a feedback loop that has trapped him within his own holographic simulation generated by the sum total of his codes, memories, and subroutines. He can see Chakotay, who is currently being projected into the holodeck program, which is Chakotay's only way to reach the Doctor, and explain to him that no matter how real it may seem, this is still just a holodeck illusion. Chakotay explains further that if the Doctor destroys the holodeck Voyager simulation, he is in fact terminating the feedback loop, which would destroy the Doctor's subroutine data. In other words, the Doctor would destroy himself. Barclay tries to convince the Doctor one last time to end the illusion and destroy Voyager. Cass appears before him, and not as the assistant that the EMH knows her to be, but as Zimmerman's actual wife, who pleads with him to destroy the warp core and end the simulation. Chakotay returns and tries to divorce the Doctor from the all-too-real temptations which are overwhelming him. As Chakotay pleads with the Doctor to hold on a little longer, Zimmerman collapses from the pain and Cass kisses him. As he professes his feelings for her, the Doctor finds himself in sickbay, being watched over by Cass, Harry Kim, and Tuvok, who reports to Chakotay that the Doctor is fine and functioning normally. As Kim and Tuvok leave, Cass presses the Doctor about the feelings he expressed towards her when he was recovering on the biobed, which strikes the Doctor as odd. And as she begins to act strangely aggressive, Barclay returns, encouraging the Doctor to destroy the warp core. The Doctor tries to escape sickbay, but is blocked by an armed Kazon, and even more terrifying, is forced to treat an injured patient who looks just like him, but speaks with Janeway's voice, who says, "Try to calm down, Doctor. Everything's going to be fine." Suddenly, the Doctor finds himself on the real holodeck grid, and is greeted by the real Janeway and Chakotay, who inform him that the crisis is over. Later, in sickbay, the Doctor tells Cass what actually happened when he was trapped in his holodeck simulation. Cass asks him to keep their marriage a secret, especially from Neelix, who gets overly jealous of these matters. The Doctor wonders why he focused on the particular delusion which questioned his humanity and his purpose. Cass admits that she wonders and questions her existence as well, and probes the Doctor one last time if he is truly in fact certain of his purpose aboard Voyager. In other words, is he only just the emergency medical hologram? The end.
All right. Nicely done, Norman. If, in fact, that was the real Norman Lau reading that recap and not just the computer construct of Norman Lau doing a recap. But either way, well done. I think whichever one of you
I feel that I understand my purpose for Mission Log, if in fact that I am a Mission Log co-host, but that remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah. All right. So thoughts, observations here about projections. What do we think?
Okay. I like the beginning of this episode when the computer is basically saying everything is offline, including sewage and waste reclamation, which is strange because you never really hear about that, right?
Yes, it's always the question, where is the bathroom on the Enterprise? The one, and there have to be many, but we've never even seen one. I think the closest we ever got to it is, the earliest anyway, would be the sonic shower in the motion picture. So we know that there's something there. But yeah, I thought, of course, I want to know all the environmental and, personal situations on the on a
it's
a
like
starship.
The checklist. Let's see, warp cores offline, shields are offline. It's like yeah, replicators offline, yeah, sewage and water. What, sewage is offline? What?
No. let's fix that first, please. Yeah. That was. I'm glad you noticed that. I noticed that too. Now, of course, we've talked about the Doctor having the ability to end his own program. I did wonder, obviously you can't do it for dramatic purposes here, but is that really the best time to do it? I mean, if everyone is gone, to his knowledge, at that moment, as the story unfolds to him, should he really just decide that he is no longer needed? Just I'm gone, and if somebody needs to reactivate me, boom. Because the Doctor is the one being on board that does not need to eat or use the sewage reclamation, right. Water reclamation or sewage systems. It seems like in an emergency, that would be the one thing you actually keep on the whole time.
I mean, why not? So, it's kind of like deleting files, but you really don't need to because you don't really have to save space. You can just leave them alone.
Right.
In case you need them later.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I really love how improved the LCARS displays are getting over time in this series. And I really like the animation of that double helix graphic that was on the Doctor's board behind him when he's about to self-terminate, which again, why would you do that? So
right. Yeah, I mean, because it's one of those things where we're in this transition period of, end of TNG. It's been off for a year. DS9 is 3 seasons in, and Voyager comes along with a lower budget, but the benefit of all the production knowledge that has come before it. And we saw these things happen where you go from the very analog TNG, where all those graphics are printed, and physically made, to then we start to get some live graphics on DS9 in those, very obviously CRT tubes built into the set. And you have those here too, but the quality of the graphics gets better over time. So yeah, good to see little bits like that. Well, see, B'Elanna did say, I had to crawl through 31 Jeffries tubes just to get here. Which I'm thinking, for Tuvok, he'd say for complaining about that, you're weak. Because they just said this is a day's exercise for him. Go through 50 of those and, keep running.
I wonder if she found any, space cups along the way, hidden in Jeffrey's tubes.
Right. Yeah. Or some, lost panting cadet.
A skeleton there covered with cobwebs. Right.
Right. Cobwebs in a sweatsuit.
I like it that the Doctor, he uses two medical tricorders on B'Elanna. He's like, these aren't working. So he goes just back to regular old-fashioned, exploratory medicine by actually examining her, right?
Yeah.
Of course he would.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Good point. Because he's trained in every possible diagnostic technique, so that's pretty great. I do know that, again, everything that happens is a construct of the story, so I get that. I get that. But introducing the idea of the holo emitters and basically telling the Doctor, we set up this thing that fundamentally changes how you can interact with the crew, but we decided not to tell you about it.
This is important, but you don't need to know, right?
But you didn't need to know. Yeah. Like that's very clearly something that is meant to tip off the audience. Something is wrong, but at the same time kind of cover its own tracks. So I thought that was funny.
Yeah. I mean, there's a really nice detail, and it was kind of like a throwaway line. But, before the Doctor is beamed out of sickbay and onto the bridge, I like that he asks B'Elanna if there was a medical kit behind tactical.
Oh, right.
It just gives him kind of like the agency of, okay, if I'm going to do this, I better have the proper tools to be able to treat people to wherever I'm going on the ship. I just thought it was neat. It didn't need to be there, but I liked that it was there. And I had to, I don't know if you laughed, John, because I know you're a fan of Doctor Who. I'm a fan of Doctor Who. We have many listeners are fans of Doctor Who. And as soon as he's beamed onto the bridge, he said, well, it's bigger than I thought. Like, it's bigger on the inside, right?
Yeah. Bigger on the inside. Yeah, exactly. Like it should be. Speaking of when we get to the bridge, and that is a good point about the medical kit, because little details like that, well, like mentioning the water reclamation and sewage on board, little details that make it a more believable space. Like, they're going to have fire extinguishers. They're going to have a medical kit. They'll just have these things around where they need them. So it gives a bit of life and detail to the space. I always appreciate when you can do a good redress of an existing set. So Voyager looking like it's been through a lot, and the monitors are kind of flickering and the lights are dim, and even Janeway, I mean, looking just really beat up after that skirmish with the Kazon. Like all of that was played very convincingly.
Yeah,
very
I mean,
well.
it's pretty amazing, like how like flickering lights, smoke, and some hanging debris, and obviously some extreme lighting effects can really change like the whole atmosphere. But as serious as that scene was, I really did laugh out loud when Janeway tried to explain like how to bypass the power conduit, and he's like, the Doctor says, "Is that like a coronary bypass? Because if so, then I'm your guy, right?"
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, Doctor, a bypass is a bypass, whether it's heart or ship systems. I feel like you can do this. Shout out to Jupiter Station. I'd like to hear references to that. It makes it kind of a very real and an evolving living space in the Star Trek universe.
Even though the scene played for comedy, of course, kind of took me out a little bit when Neelix was fighting the Kazon with food. At the very end, when Ethan barks out, it's like, "No one gets the best of me in my kitchen." Like, the way that he barked it out, I'm like, there is still darkness in there. You know?
I'm glad, because that scene did take me out of it. And again, it's like, we'll get to this at the end of the show, kind of the replay value, knowing that everything is a construct. But that scene did take me out of it. I'm glad that there's still that edge there a little bit that you picked up on. This is a minor thing, and I'm sure that a million people out there know the answer, but why is Dr. Louis Zimmerman wearing gold in his in his picture from the LCARS display? Engineering? I would think that he would be in blue. That was kind of a weird choice. I know they want to distinguish him from the EMH, but you would just think science is medical. He's a medical doctor. He would be in blue.
Well, I mean, he's also yellow at the end of the episode in the biobed where he's kind of like half burned.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So
totally.
maybe they're trying to make a correlation with engineer and hologram engineer.
Yeah, I mean, there's an engineering aspect to that, absolutely. Or maybe he's so good and so advanced, so smart that he can do both. He can just do all of the above. But I wonder if that's the thing that we will see in consistency coming back.
That's now become part of the home game. That's home game level.
Mm-hmm. It is a total home game stuff. Yep.
Speaking of home game, here's your 47 reference for the episode as the Voyager crew is stored in memory block 47 Alpha. There it is.
Of course it is. Of course it is. And by the way, that memory block 47, I know that this is all about suspension of disbelief. I know that it's all about letting the computer kind of run wild and see what we get from it. That is the whole point of the episode. Why would it have a fully realized character of Barclay in its storage? I mean, I get that he was part of the team, and I get that people leave their imprint on their work. Absolutely makes sense. I get that. But are there others in there too? Are they just uploaded characters who are also fighting for storage space in the computer? Could they just also show up one day? There's a whole who knows how many people worked on the EMH? Could be dozens, and they could all just be hanging out, ready for their opportunity to shine in the EMH.
Well, this is what happens. We don't give them the ability to self-terminate, so they're just hang out
exactly.
as files are wont to do. Either the script was inconsistent, or Dwight was inconsistent, or maybe people just didn't care enough to edit this. But either Reg is correct saying the Voyager or Voyager, because he says it both ways, and it seems a little grating after repeat viewings of which we do when we review our episodes.
Yeah, so, okay, that really stood out to me as well, and I know it shouldn't be a huge deal, but it is a consistency thing. And look, I always wonder from series to series anyway. People talk about going back to the Defiant, not Defiant. Kirk talks about going back to the Enterprise, not Enterprise. Yet on Enterprise, which we haven't gotten to, I just broke the timeline. Oh, negative 10 points for me. They always talk about Enterprise. That they are flying through space on Enterprise. So with Voyager, I wonder if there's a decision made early on to say we refer to this as Voyager, not the Voyager. And I don't know if there is some sort of consistent rule when it comes to, say, modern-day naval vessels that you would refer to one as one or the other. I don't know.
Just to reference really quickly, when Chekhov and Uhura are observing the Enterprise naval carrier, in 1986 and the voyage home, Chekhov says, "And sir, it is the Enterprise." That's what he says.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, it's just,
he sure does.
Potato kind of thing.
Yeah. Maybe so. If anybody out there can shed any light on it, we would appreciate it. I do love Hologram Barclay saying, "Well, I'm just not an alien," because to me, that sounds like something an alien
I'm not
would
guilty.
say. Right? I do love how now the term Banjo Man is canonized on screen. That is now part of the vernacular. He will always and forever be Banjo Man.
It is canon. Cool. It is handheld, in quotes, canon.
Yes, exactly. And I love the disappointment in the line that the EMH has, "Then it's true. I am a real person."
Oh,
totally the opposite of Pinocchio. It's the opposite of what Data wants. There is this forlorn look on his face that he's a real person when he is convinced.
John, is he projecting? Oh, I don't want to jump my own timeline.
What?
Is he projecting?
Uh-oh.
Kinoplasmic radiation. So I looked this up. Referencing Memory Alpha online. And Memory Alpha describes kinoplasmic radiation as radiation that adversely affects computer systems. That's what I got.
Hey, sure. Yeah. Okay, good.
HTDS, holotransference dementia syndrome. As far as I know, this is the first time that we've heard this referenced in Star Trek. And
I think you're right. You're right.
Would what Nog was suffering in It's Only a Paper Moon be classified as holotransference dimension syndrome? Because he wanted to stay in the holodeck because his holodeck reality, as far as he was concerned, was better than his current reality.
Well, for that matter, our very own Lieutenant Reg Barclay. I don't think I can't remember if in Hollow Pursuits or at any point after that we ever put a name on that, on what he was going through, sort of losing himself in the fantasy of the holodeck. But I do like this. HTDS is now the standardized thing.
So I have a huge point of contention, bone to pick, whatever you want to call it, whatever euphemism, with Brannon writing the script. And it really, really, really upsets me that he missed this huge opportunity to describe Tom Paris's doppelganger that Barclay based him on.
Oh, right. Yeah.
From his cousin Nicholas.
It should have been Nick, of course. Right. Oh,
instead of Frank.
Yeah, that
Frank's
been
funny,
nice.
whatever. But if he said Nick, the fans, I think, would have lost their minds.
That would have been on the nose, and in a good way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Speaking of losing one's mind, the whole Kess Zimmerman, I'm your wife twist.
That was well played. Yeah.
And John, so I know that you've always brought this up, and I know you bring it up for humorous bits. I know you bring it up for, very thoughtful introspection about the Doctor and what he's capable of, how he's an extension of the computer system and the systems aboard Voyager. So why would he need a day off?
Thank you.
A day off of what?
I
Right?
Exactly. Because for that matter, look, the computer could make 4 or 5 of him, and you just keep duplicating the program, just like you do a file on your desktop. So I'm not totally convinced that he needs a day off, and if he does, why would he want to go to the holodeck? It's very, very strange.
So if you're a fan of American Werewolf in London, as I am, and I'm sure that you are. There are scenes within scenes within scenes within dream sequences within dream sequences. And I really was caught off guard by this episode at the second to last dream sequence not being the truly realized reality that he returned to. Were you? Was anyone else?
Yep. I thought that very well done in this, And I will say that when we do have the reveal that we are still in a dream sequence, the nice use of the fisheye lens, and I love the captain's voice coming out of the EMH's face. That effect was a little weird, but it still worked. I mean, it just drove home the insanity of what was going on. And I do have to say there's something like, it was a weird moment of twisted, but also sweet and comforting when this look on the Doctor's face when his arm disappears through the sickbay door when he tries to go beyond the bounds of the holoprojector. Like, it was great. You just go like, wow, that's just a creepy, weird thing to have your arm disappear. But for him, it's like, the comfort of being at home in his own reality.
There's a strange play here on the euphemism, know your role. He knows the boundaries of where he's comfortable, and once he's outside those boundaries, it kind of like, it's like when Kess asks him at the end of this episode, are you sure about that? Are you sure about your role here on Voyager? And it's very much like, it leaves the question, like the top spinning at the end of Inception. Like, are we in the reality that we believe that we're in, or are we not?
Is your head spinning like you got clocked on Maki Day yet? If so, I think the episode is working.
We'll get right back to projections, but first a word from this week's sponsor, who happens to be you. All of you who have been supporting us on Patreon over the years, or maybe you're brand new to Patreon, patreon.com/missionlog, and maybe you've dug around and you've found our early releases of the unedited, unexpurgated Mission Log episodes. Maybe you're in it for the swag, the exclusive stickers and coffee mugs and t-shirts and other things you can get there. Or maybe, just maybe, you're in it for the Discord. Because, Norman, if I'm right, the conversation really continues on the Mission Log Discord.
Or maybe you're in it to win it. And by winning it, I mean being on the Discord with us. And you're right, John. The conversation that we have in this community that we've been building for almost a year now, I think we're coming up on our anniversary of when we actually launched Discord. What we have been able to grow and to foster and to encourage is this wonderful collective of people that just love being there, talking about Star Trek and so many other science fiction or fantasy or fandom topics, and finding these wonderful relationships, these friendships that have extended within the Discord community and without, especially being able to meet each other in person at conventions or just as friends. Something that started off as something that we wanted just to have as an outlet for people during COVID has turned into so much more than we could even possibly have realized.
Yeah, I love checking in on not only the conversations that we're having. It's about Star Trek. It's about our other fandoms. It's about food and travel and getting together and just any topic under the sun in this really great, respectful, supportive environment. And, of course, that doesn't even scratch the surface when we get into our live chats and events online like Mission Log After Dark or Hailing Frequencies Open, where you join us live, video, audio, and sure, it's topical, but sometimes it's just a lot of fun. Well, okay, every time it's a lot of fun, too. So join us there at patreon.com/missionlog. That is your key to entry to get to the Mission Log Discord. So if you're trying to figure out why is everybody talking about Discord, how do I get to Discord? Well, one stop first, patreon.com/missionlog, and then you will be invited to our Discord, and we will see you there. Hey, Norman, I have a really simple question to kick off the discussion today.
Sure.
How do you know what you know?
Because I know it, I guess.
Fair enough. I mean, did somebody show up and say, like, oh, no, well, trust me, I'm not an alien, but here's your reality. I'm just going to tell you what your reality is.
I mean, I did trust the alien, so...
Okay, all right. Well,
I don't know, maybe this skews at everything.
So the alien said that they were an alien. They just
I believed
and you
it.
believed it. Okay, good. Sure. All right, so you know you know what you know because you believe what you were told. So that's good. That's one way to go through life. To just believe it. You know, this episode is so interesting on a multitude of levels because you have the mystery of what is actually going on with the Doctor. Is this a technology problem to solve? Is there something else going on? Which reality is the real reality? But at its heart, what I think is so cool, it's like this baby step introduction into the very concept of epistemology. How do we know the things that we know? I don't care what the belief is. I don't care what that knowledge is, but how do you know that it's true? How did you come by that information and being convinced that information was true? And I love seeing the Doctor, you know, he obviously he knows what he knows from the start, which is he is an EMH on the Voyager or on Voyager.
That sounds so weird.
I know. Trapped somewhere out in the Delta Quadrant. But then what's interesting is when he's presented with new information, how does he test the validity of the new information that he's getting? And to me, that's the fun part about watching this episode, because he has a really smart opponent, because the opponent is him. The opponent is Voyager's computer talking back to him as a holographic character with all the knowledge and information and environmental understanding that he already has. So, of course, when he asks Barclay, or the projection of Barclay, essentially, you know, how do I know you're not an alien? How do I know that this or that and the other thing isn't happening? And Barclay just says, well, because I'm not. And it's like, well, at a certain point, how much more test of that information can you do? And the Doctor does what he thinks he should do, pick up a tricorder, scan the room. Oh, wait, a few meters beyond this, we're out of the holodeck. That's where we are. But how do you then trust the tools that you're using to scan to make sure that information is correct? It's this wonderful way to say to the audience, like, okay, you can take some things for granted, but how then do you have confidence in the tools that you use to even get you to that point? I think it's just great. I think that kind of thing to be able to do in an entertaining TV show for 48 minutes is very cool.
I love that you bring up the issue with the tricorders, because that was something that was made very specific as an issue with the Doctor at the very beginning, especially with B'Elanna.
Yeah.
Because the tricorder is the highest form of technological input-output that they have in order to assess a situation immediately in terms of the data that it receives and digests. But what if you don't have that? What if you can't trust that? Then the Doctor goes to examining in the old-fashioned way, using his senses, using his tactile information, making sure that the old methods of medicine still don't betray him the way that the tricorders have. And it gets to the point where all of the technological information that is supposed to inform him of a certain truth in his narrative all give him false positives, right? So what do you believe? How do you believe it in the era of all of this data that is at the highest level of technological reception is pointing in the other direction?
Well, and that's what's so fun about it, is because here's the doctor, here's the EMH, who, let's just say those are the two tools at his disposal. The two tools are the tricorder and also his ability to see a patient, talk to a patient, examine whatever is happening with that patient. Like the false positive blood stain on Neelix, which turns out to be tomato sauce. But then the EMH himself is bleeding. So he has these two possible ways of exploring his environment. But both of those now he doesn't trust because he can't. And it really opens up this sort of, look, it's a mental exercise, I think, especially since the movie The Matrix came out, which posed this very provocative idea to a mass audience, which is, what if we're all in a simulation? And the problem posed by an episode like this is, how would you know? How would you know you're actually in a simulation? Because your tests are going to be inadequate. And that really is the problem with that line of thinking, is that the very proposal lacks evidence or a way to actually test it. So at that point, it's just academic. Like, it's an interesting mental exercise. It's an interesting philosophical game to play with yourself. But there's really no way to actually examine that proposal. And I love it even in the episode. The doctor is saying to Barclay, but I have memories. It's all part of the simulation. Right? Because then it's one of those things, it's like talking to somebody who has deeply held conspiratorial beliefs. It's like any evidence against the conspiracy is then evidence for the conspiracy. Yeah. Well, that thing was just meant to throw you off. So, literally, there's no way to get out of that line of thinking.
It's like the Russian doll, right? The Russian doll that's within the Russian doll, within the Russian doll, within the Russian doll. You open one up and there's another one but smaller. Then you open up another one but there's another one but smaller.
Right.
Each one of those things, right? They all host all of the doctor's data. So everything is feeding on itself to convince itself that there is no other logical alternative but the information that is before you, with maybe one possible slight deviation from the course, which allows them to think just enough to be able to question something which also has a defense mechanism already built in, because he's defending the logic that is being questioned. So, right,
exactly.
But above all of this, I think there's a larger, more philosophical components to it, and I think that's part of the title. We haven't done the title game.
No, we haven't. We haven't in a while.
In a long time. So when I looked at, there are a lot of one-word titles in this season.
That is a Brannon thing, for sure, for sure.
The title's projections. Let's think about the usage of the word projections as applied to this episode. So I don't know why I went down this particular line of reasoning, but the title represents projections from a psychological standpoint, in my opinion. The doctor is replicated in holographic form, the doctor being Louis Zimmerman. Yeah. But his holographic ego is also being represented in a form of projection within itself, inside this holographic construct that it's created because of this kinoplasmic radiation. So first and foremost, I want to create a disclaimer, because I know that we get deep into this. Yeah. John, neither you or I, as far as I know, we're not practicing psychologists, nor do we have degrees to that fact.
No.
So we're just looking at this as a way of looking at a possible direction of what's happening with the doctor's character. So I looked at psychologytoday.com and wanted to understand more about projection as it applies to the title. Projection is unconscious discomfort that can lead people to attribute unacceptable feelings or impulses to someone else to avoid confronting them. Projection also allows the difficult trait to be addressed without the individual fully recognizing it in themselves. So based on this definition, as it applies to this episode, I see this interpretation as the doctor projecting his desire to be human or to be actually like Zimmerman.
Ooh.
And you said earlier in
Interesting.
Observations, when he made that realization that he is human, there was despair in his voice.
Yeah.
But why? If he's actually trying to do this.
Yeah, well, you know what? Is he, though, or is it... I'll sort of butcher a Carl Sagan quote here, is that the EMH is sort of persisting in the comfortable delusion rather than what at this point would be an earth-shaking reality. If that were the reality, he's presented with this idea that he may actually be this human, but if the delusion is more comfortable, remember the comfort that he sees in his arm disappearing out of that room. Oh, okay, I know my purpose. I know my space here. That actually is very much in line with a note that I took about this episode overall, which is that the EMH here in this episode has this very personal and philosophical journey. And it's important because, almost from the beginning of the series, with some coaxing from Kes, to be sure, the crew have accepted and adopted the EMH as part of their team. He is a being of some sort who should be afforded autonomy and respect. The captain does that. That's an important example that gets set for the rest of the crew. Some people had more trouble with it than others, but whatever. We're 17 episodes in, and that's where we are. The person who doesn't always see that and who doesn't always know what to do with it is the Doctor himself. And so think about it. We open the show with him about to shut himself down, in the first act, because he doesn't think that he is of use to anyone and that is his only function, is just being of use, right? So the course of this episode, I love that it shows him going, through moments of realization about himself. But again, I come back to that last scene, testing the boundary. That is something he is doing for nobody but himself. And I think that's why it's kind of lovely to see that, even though it would be weird. It would be terrifying for one of us as a human being to see your arm disappear out a door. But for him, that is the comfort of then where he is again.
Well, looking at it at this stage of the game, in terms of his diagnostic subroutine, what if what was happening to him after this kinoplasmic radiation surge was a subroutine that actually activated a subconscious within him?
Ooh.
Is he capable? Because we are now projecting, we as the audience are projecting that the Doctor is in of himself able to cognitively understand his own existence. That's the credibility that we're giving him throughout the course of these episodes, how he's building that autonomy and agency of himself.
Well, we are projecting a very human a very human attribute on technology. We in mission log tradition, we maybe shouldn't call it artificial intelligence, but manufactured intelligence. It is intelligence nonetheless.
So the big question is he capable at this stage of the accident, post-accident, is he capable of projecting his subconscious so that there are certain things even beyond his understanding that are being projected as the Doctor would project himself as a hologram? So in these two cases, Kes says to him at the end, believe in yourself. You're not a program. You're a real flesh and blood human being. And you're my husband. I don't want to lose you. This is at the very end when he's trying to resolve who he is. Yeah. This is the Doctor projecting his feelings for Kes, even though he doesn't understand that he has feelings for Kes in that way.
Right. Oh, okay. The EMH being a part of Voyager's computer has essentially seen and heard and recorded all of his interactions with Kes through the Doctor's eyes.
Exactly. And that goes into the definition earlier of when I said projection allows the difficult trait to be addressed without the individual fully recognizing it in themselves. This is the Doctor and Kes. But also, there is more of the human conundrum that the Doctor is projecting about his desire to be real. And this is when Barclay says, Lewis, when he is trying to convince the Doctor that he's Louis Zimmerman.
Yeah.
He says, Louis, how would you rather think of yourself? As a real person with a real life, with a family that loves you, or as some hologram that exists in a sickbay on a starship lost deep in space?
I wrote down the same line because the thing that is in that line, the word hologram, is dripping with disdain. So here's Voyager's computer, smart enough to project the tender feelings, the romantic feelings that he might have for Kes, however we want to define those. I mean, it's something that is a bond, right? All the way up to this, like, self-loathing that exists somewhere in the back of that program, which could be residual from just being a creation of Louis Zimmerman. If the EMH is purely seen by Zimmerman as a creation, as a piece of technology, then I'm sure that the real Louis Zimmerman would see him as something lesser than. You know, he might be an achievement, but he's not the real deal. He's not the real flesh and blood.
So I love how you describe that word when the way that Barclay says it, you know, when he says hologram with disdain. Is Barclay then the subconscious projection of the Doctor's own defense mechanism to convince him that he is this and not that?
Yeah. I mean, it's literally sort of like the devil on one shoulder, the angel on the other shoulder.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, okay, I want to take this train of thought that you have about projections and how this means. I'm going to take it in a very slightly different direction because, you have a projection of Voyager's computer projecting its own existential crisis on the characters that it created in the holosimulation. Because, again, it's very hard to draw a very distinct line between the EMH and Voyager's computer itself. I know that we can sort of think of it as a program, as an application that runs, but that application and the way Voyager's computer is working 24/7 seems like there's also a lot of gray area in between. So at the end of the day, is this Voyager's computer daydreaming? I mean, it is the thing that produces the EMH, and now it has a glitch.
Wow, that concept is so big.
Yeah.
It's so big.
So again, okay, so you have the EMH, and you have Barclay, and you have the other holo projections of the crew. It's the computer having a conversation with itself.
Right.
Yeah.
I know that, and John, you've been doing this consistently, so I know that you have a very specific track of thought when it comes to the computer and the Doctor as a representation of the computer's core memory in the form of the EMH. So, yeah, are we to believe, based on your logic, that the computer of Voyager itself is what is actually projecting what it knows of the Doctor as something that the Voyager also desires as the computer?
I mean, look, go back to was it in the last season of TNG? You had the Enterprise computer give birth, for lack of a better description, to a being that the Enterprise crew lets go out into the galaxy because it's not theirs to keep, but it is an expression of the computer's intelligence being creative and perpetuating itself. So who's to say that another computer built by the same technicians, the same shipyard somewhere, now using some new and interesting bioneural gel packs? Yeah, that's it, BNGPs.
Well done.
Yeah, thank you. Isn't then the next stage in a highly intelligent computer able to express those properties?
Somehow nobody involved in this episode saw the potential for a sitcom spin-off called I Married an Acampa.
Well, this has been a fabulous conversation. If, in fact, John, this conversation took place at all, because I'm just projecting that this conversation about projections happened.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that it did. I think this entire thing is happening in my mind, and That's it.
Okay, but what will it take for me to convince you that this conversation took place? I mean, I can tell you that the conversation took place.
I don't know if I believe you.
All right.
Yeah.
So here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do to satisfy the projection of this at the very end of this episode. We're going to theorize or project to the audience that's listening to us right now, if in fact they exist, what we do here on Mission Log. And that is, let's take a look at if this episode, if it actually happened, or if the actual episode of the episode that we're talking about actually happened, holds up.
That's the one.
And if we have found any morals or meanings and messages contained therein in the episode that may have actually happened.
Yes, all of the above. Okay, so look, I'm going to do something that I rarely ever do, which is I wrote all these notes about how I felt about the episode holding up, and I'm pretty much going to ignore those.
Yes.
Because very often what I'll do is I'll watch an episode for the first time and just get my initial thoughts down, right? And then usually those kind of stay true to my final assessment. But what just happened? We did the thing that I love the most, which is we got to have a conversation and dive into what excited us about this episode, what the thoughts were that it dragged up, and it changed my estimation of this episode. And it's not to say that I didn't like this episode before. I just think that when I took my initial notes, I felt a little ho-hum about it. I mean, because I'm watching it initially from, do the technical aspects hold up? And they're okay. There are places that the episode shows its age. Some of the effects are not always great, and certainly in the streaming quality, not always great, but you kind of get what you can. And then you have an episode that is based around a twist. And whenever you watch an episode that features a big plot twist in it, you then kind of ask yourself, okay, well, does it hold up to repeated viewings? Am I just sort of watching it and playing the home game? Like, oh, okay, I know what this clue is about now, so that's just getting me from point A to point B. And those were the things that were going in my head. It was like, oh, okay, did I know that it was a construct from the moment that the EMH discovered that his tricorders weren't working, or the moment that B'Elanna told him about the holo emitters and how that was just a brand new thing that he didn't know about yet? Or was it Neelix fighting the Kazon soldier? I didn't like that scene as much. It played a bit too much for comedy for me, but these are all tip-offs to tell the audience that what's happening isn't really real, and those are much more apparent when you go back and rewatch it. But the more we talked about it, the more I thought, this is one of those episodes where it really isn't about decoding the clues that are left for you along the way. It really isn't about just getting to the twist. What it's about is the character journey. And so much here is revealed about the Doctor and, well, Voyager's computer, of which he is a part, having a conversation with itself about the ideas of identity and existentialism. That, to me, elevates this episode far beyond anything that might be a shortcoming in either its story structure or any technical shortcomings, since we're looking at something that's nearly 30 years old, So what we end up with is this story that truly appreciates the very unique talent that Bob Picardo has. Mm-hmm. This one was written, like I said in the trivia, for the first season, and I can only imagine how this would have been taken maybe if we'd hit it way earlier. What if this was right in the middle of the first season? You go, whoa, wow, we're already starting this soon with this deep thought episode about this fascinating character. And then look, you've got Jonathan Frakes' talent on display here as a director. He doesn't have to do too much, too crazy, but what he does, I think he accomplishes very well. I just have to sum it up by saying this is better after a second and third viewing, and particularly better after having a conversation like we get to do here. That I don't know if I can say that this is going to be among the best episodes of Voyager that I will have watched when we are through this journey. I don't know if I'm going to be able to say that this is one of the best episodes featuring the Doctor when we get through the rest of our journey. But right now, it's definitely up there for me because the strength of the idea at its core is so solid. But then to see that performed in emotional ways through Bob, certainly through Dwight Schultz acting as that antagonistic voice toward him, is fascinating. It's a great episode. And I think it does actually hold up better second or third time around than even on your first watch. How about you?
I mean, I really loved this episode from the start, probably after my first viewing, and it just got better over time as we were, as we do here on Mission Log, as we take a look at it for all the different layers that it has, looking for, all of these different, observations and discussion points, etc. And I'm going to echo a lot of what you said about, having Bob Picardo in there working, with Dwight Schultz, and then having the supporting cast, or actually the main cast, support that story was just really marvelous to watch. But I really do believe that this was about Frakes taking a script and understanding the era of Star Trek that he was in and was a part of, and really being able to push a certain visual envelope where, say, other veteran Star Trek directors, say Veenrik Kolbe or Mike Vehar or David Livingstone, may have not have pushed it as far as Jonathan Frakes did. And maybe it's just because his instincts as a director or his understanding of the material, or basically maybe because he was trying to create that episode resume for First Contact, where he was creating something a little bit more dramatic than it should have been. And the Neelix scene aside, because we know that it was kind of played for levity. But the only thing that I just don't buy, and I wouldn't have bought in 1995 when I was a far more cynical 20-something, as opposed to the less cynical 50-something I am now. Right. But I just don't buy any of like these high-risk episodes where the crisis, the existential threat, is destroying the ship itself. Because no ship, no story, no series, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's something that I'm just like, okay, I have to put that aside. I have to check myself and watch this episode for the reasons why you said, John, are worth watching it for. And that's the story. That's the development, the evolution of the character. The central theme of the Doctor projecting his subconscious desires is amazing when you really take a look at it. Think about like what he's doing for a second, how it applies to, say, other stories of very similar degrees, like Blade Runner, or, as you mentioned earlier, Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and how that applies to the way that material, that wonderful classic science fiction material, has been used to inform episodes like Measure of a Man in The Next Generation, where Data is being on trial, put on trial for being sentient or not. And in this case, like, basically is the proving ground for the Doctor as a hologram. Is he projecting an ego? Is he capable of doing that? And what is the narrative behind that? And why is it why is it important for us to see at this time? And it makes more sense now when you have said in trivia and then just in your response here that this was supposed to have been a holdover before season 2. That makes more sense after a few episodes, when the Doctor explored the nature of his existence in Heroes and Demons and how that affected him. So think about it in terms of, the Doctor asking this basic existential question, who am I? And it just blows my mind that you have actually added one more component to not just the Doctor's understanding of that or questioning himself, but the Voyager computer actually being the projection of the Doctor questioning himself.
Right. Let's see where we land on some morals, meanings, messages here. We have this philosophical conundrum for the Doctor, for this manufactured intelligence to crunch over for a while for our entertainment and our enjoyment. But are there messages here? Well, I really have to hand it to Brannon here with some just really on-the-nose lines. There's this great moment that Chakotay comes into the scene, and he tells the Doctor, this isn't about what you want. This is about what you are. Just because you're made of light and energy doesn't mean that you're less real than someone made of flesh and blood. It doesn't matter what you're made of. What matters is who you are. And look, it's so bonk on the head to use a classic mission log reference. But I'm telling you right now that is what I am here for. You know, think back to those days of TOS when it was radical to see a character like Spock on TV telling a black woman who is an equal part of that bridge crew that there is no one better equipped to do her job than her. And that's what Star Trek telling the audience that what matters is who you are. And 30 years after TOS, we see it updated here because sometimes it needs reinforcement. And we all need to hear it from time to time. And I love the simplicity, the directness of Chakotay putting those thoughts into the EMH's head. I just think it's lovely. But here's really, to me, the other most important lesson from this episode, and it is more philosophical. So I mentioned Descartes at the top of the show, arriving at the conclusion, I think, therefore I am. But I want to drop another line here that preceded it in Descartes' writings. And I won't do the Latin.
Oh,
I know.
Right.
But what he said, at last, I will devote myself sincerely and without reservation to the general demolition of my opinions. I love that line. Because while Descartes and I may part ways with some of our beliefs, some of our thoughts, we are 100% in line. I can't help but be in awe of the simple beauty of that idea. The idea that if we're being honest, then we have a philosophical imperative to pick apart, analyze, and scrutinize the very foundations of what we believe about ourselves and the world around us, the very nature of our reality. It's only when you strip away everything, including the most sacred of beliefs, that you can start to build a new foundation on what is true. So I love seeing the Doctor work through that. Our situation as non-holographic beings might be a little bit different, but the philosophy, the imperative, the impetus should all stay exactly to that theme. What about you, Norman?
So John and I think we're going to be on the same page here, but where you bring in literature and philosophy, and in ancient texts, I'm going to supplement that with pop culture.
Perfect. Hey, it all blends together, man.
So the moral of the story that I came away with, and you out there may be familiar with this moral, is there is no spoon. Okay, so
I see what you did there.
If you're a fan of The Matrix, you may know that. If not, I'm going to explain a little bit of what that means in terms of what I feel is relative to this episode. I mean, all kidding aside, we are into deep existentialist theory here in this episode. And because of this, I have to reference one of my all-time favorite scenes from The Matrix when Morpheus is trying to explain to Mr. Anderson, pre-Neo, that reality is thus, and I quote, "What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain." Now, doubling down on this line of reasoning, what if we replaced Neo with the Doctor and replaced Morpheus with Barclay when Barclay is asking the Doctor, "Have you ever had a dream, Doctor, that you were sure was real? What if you were unable to wake from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world?" And this, in my opinion, is at the core of what this episode is about. What is the tangible proof that defines reality? And if you can actually provide the most incontrovertible proof that reality does in fact exist, is that enough to end the inescapable existential crisis that many out there face in a world that only leaves us with more questions than answers? Cass is pitch perfect in this regard at the end when she says, "Well, sometimes I ask those kind of questions. Who am I? What am I doing here? What's my purpose in life? Doesn't everybody?" And I think this is at the heart and the moral of this episode, and perhaps that is the point to all of this. Just to be open-minded and accepting enough to hear the possible answers to what may very well be unanswerable questions.
Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog for early access to shows and the Mission Log Discord. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com, and for more Star Trek news and discussion, visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, Elogium.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com. Special thanks to consulting producers Adam Brusky, Matt Esposito, Homer Frizzell, John Mann, Mike Richards, and Mike Schabel. By the way, if you pack sandwiches, you should probably double-check them. They may not actually exist. End transmission.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.